this is Maggie, and welcome to another YouTube video. This video is going to be a little different from what I'm used to making. This one's going to be completely scripted. I'm reading off of a script right now, hi! Because today I'm going to be telling you about something I've been talking about for almost all of my videos. This video is going to be about my Deltarune AU and those T's. If you've heard about characters like Gary, this Gary, not the other one, and Telly, you've seen them on my sketchbook tours, other videos of mine, etc. They are both part of this project. This is something I've been working on since chapter 2 came out about 4 years ago. Oh my god. So there's a lot to go through, hence the need for a script. I'll also be having a speed paint going on in the background while I talk, so y'all have something to look at. Look at that, I figured out how to do these. Oh my god, this is gonna be so much fun. This is gonna be another long one, I think. So grab a snack or do something while this video is playing in the background. So, without further ado, let's get started. This video assumes that you already know what Deltarune is, the characters, plot lines, some theories even, but if you don't, I'ma give you a small rundown of it just as like an introduction. Deltarune is a chapter-based RPG game created by Toby Fox, the same guy who made Undertale. A lot of the characters and elements from Undertale transfer over to Deltarune, but the game stands on its own two legs, with new characters, mechanics, and insane lore that leaves most fans pulling their hair out. In this game, you play as Chris, a human child who falls into magical worlds with their friend Susie and other friends that come along the way. These magical worlds are called dark worlds, where normal items from a specific room or location you're in take form as fully animated creatures called darkners. Your favorite socks, your computer, your living room TV, they're all actual people in this world, with their own memories and feelings of you depending on how you've treated them. Without getting into too much lore about the game, this is like the very basics of it. So now, with all that done, I'm gonna introduce you to my little AU. This AU is a what-if scenario where after defeating Spamton in chapter 2, you failed to collect him and simply finished the game without ever getting his items, something you can and should do with all secret bosses like him. Once you finish the game, it would refuse to close and forcefully thrust you into another adventure. The whole project is based around the idea of what if Spamton practically got admin privileges due to not wanting to die so bad. Very much pulling from the determination mechanics in Undertale. The same way monsters and humans could make save files and reload games, why couldn't a Darkner do the same thing if they had enough of a will to live? So Spamton, not wanting to die, would throw a tantrum big enough to halt the entirety of Deltarune in its tracks, changing the game to fit his own wants and needs instead of someone else's plans. Spamton, renaming himself as Gary to pass as someone else, rebuilt Cyber City to his own will, renaming it Neo City, a giant metropolis where he rules supreme as a TV news host. Gary not only remakes his city, but his own body, giving himself the height and power boost he always wanted. Going from someone screaming for heaven to watch him to borderline making himself a god. He's gotten almost everything he wants. Almost. You see, most people assume that there's already someone like this in the actual game, building everything behind the scenes in some twisted version of a story making. The fandom assumes this godlike place to belong to Gaster. Yes, the same Gaster from Undertale, the creepy dude behind that door in Waterfall. There's a bunch of evidence to this in and out of the games, being practically accepted by the whole fandom as canon in some way. We just don't know what way yet. This AU plays with that theory where, the same way Flowey lost his ability to save and load after Frisk showed up in Undertale, Gaster lost his ability to control Spamton, or Gary, after he got his own determination, and is now hunting him down to regain control and restore order over the chaos Gary has made of his plans. Now, I can finally introduce you to Gary. If you've ever seen my sketchbook tours or other videos in my channel, you've seen this guy more than once. Gary is cocky, sharp-witted, and full of himself. He's talkative for all the wrong reasons, trying to lead conversations to get what he wants out of people. He's extremely manipulative, trying to get himself out of trouble through smooth talking, offering favors, or just the idea of help to people who need it in order to save his own ass. He's not a fighter, he's a negotiator, and all of that has managed to get him this far into his own delusions. Despite most people being very aware of who Gary actually is, he despises being called Spamton. Spamton and will fake not knowing who that is, getting more and more irritated as the player and other characters associate the two. Despite his loud and bombastic way of speaking, Gary is very stone-faced, keeping his wide grin and hidden stare unbreakable during moments where one would expect him to be more excited or emotional than shown. Gary puts up the front of being very unaware of why Chris and the party arrived at his place, faking not knowing what things like dark fountains are, which would be practically impossible due to his nature of being a darkner. When alone with Chris, he somewhat drops that facade, tempting them to letting Gary cut their strings, whatever that means. Still, keeping a lot from his older self, Gary is still aware of all the meta concepts that come from Deltarune, the idea of a player controlling everything and being stuck as nothing but code inside a game, and even the idea of Gaster, who's been trying to kill him off. The idea to make Spamton the focal point of the AU came from a trend back in the day where people were creating EX versions of Spamton. They noticed similarities between Spamton and Metaton, one being that both had a Neo form, but Spamton never had an EX form shown. It was kinda hinted as a joke in his boss fight, but it was never truly realized. So the fandom took it upon themselves to make their own versions of a Spamton EX. Gary started off as that, but eventually just the whole AU project grew around him. In the plot of the AU, Gary serves as the main villain of the story, being this figure whose whole existence haunts the narrative, having impacted so many people's lives, even if he doesn't know it yet. In the story, he represents the indomitable spirit of wanting to live as you are, unrestricted and free from whatever rules this world wants you to abide by. You're still supposed to dislike him for how many lives he ruins in his pursuit for freedom, but it's hard to hate someone for fighting for their right to be as they are. With Gaster on Gary's tail, he's been trying to find a way to break out of his own reality, to escape somewhere where Gaster could never find him. Using the remains of the Neo suit, Gary would start building a machine that could tear portals into the fabric of reality, opening gateways to other timelines. Gary himself is never able to cross them, but his meddlings end up ruining people's lives on the other side, some of them even falling into his own reality. But first, we'll talk about people already in Gary's reality. There's a few characters that live with Gary, being part of his whole TV studio, who help him run things in the background. First, we're gonna talk about Ben. Ben is Gary's son, Pipish that actually hatched. Ben was an accident child that Gary now has to deal with, the kid being in charge of multiple jobs around the studio, like running the gift shop and guided tours around the place. He's a naive but sweet boy who wants to see the best in everyone he meets and wants nothing more than to please his dad. Despite wanting to see the best in people, it's very hard for Ben to realize when someone is being deceptive, even more if he cares for said person already. Ben very easily falls for ruses and lies, and he has a hard time believing that some people who he views as icons or friends can actually be deceptive or untruthful. Ben is the only good thing Gary will ever make in this chapter, the only good that could ever come out of this whole mess. He's just a kid thrust into adulthood too soon, now thinking that hanging out with the grown-ups despite his age is a good thing. It means he's so mature for his age. In reality, Gary just needs him busy enough to not be a nuisance. He's a bit of a tragic character who spends the whole game living the lie his father has built for himself. Next, there's Wendy. Wendy would serve as a small info dump boss fight inside Gary's tower. She's an Addison created by Gary to serve as a on-the-ground news reporter for the news network. Due to the city's hostile environment, Wendy would almost always return to base in need of repairs. After Gary got tired of repairing them over and over again, Wendy was just thrown in the basement under the broadcasting tower. Gary assumed they would simply cease to exist if their code kept corrupting like this, so he just left them there. They did end up disappearing from the spot they'd been thrown in, but they weren't gone. Wendy, now a walking mess of news and weather reports, wanders the empty hallways of the basement, looking for the next big headline for their job. Wendy is a big example of a life created and ruined by Gary. She and Ben are both Gary's creations, both being exploited by him to his own needs. While Ben is still very much wrapped around Gary's finger, Wendy deems herself free from Gary's grasp, even if she's now broken beyond repair. She's a cool mini-boss fight that shows firsthand the damage Gary can do to people. That's all the big important people there inside Gary's TV studio tower. But what about those who fell in? Those whose Gary's attempts to break into their dimensions ruined their lives and plucked them from their own realities. Saul is the main example for that, being plucked from a completely different timeline from Gary's attempt to escape his own reality. Saul is an Addison whose face got destroyed by Gary's meddling, which caused an accident where he fell into acid, much like Spamton in the original story. Due to this damage, he lost his job as a brand spokesperson and had to sell shady healthcare products, passing as a pharmacist. He's very much a reference to like dubious medical advice on the internet and how dangerous it can get. As he was forced to settle into Gary's dimension, he started planning his revenge and escape from this world. Much like Gary, Sol is a cunning, opportunistic man. Being someone who easily holds grudges, Sol's intentions and goals can easily become obsessions, even more if they're fueled by a need for karma or revenge. Sol is also a smooth talker. He'll try to make friends before making enemies, and by friends he means peons, bodyguards, right-hand men, anything he could find use in having nearby. Knowing what someone wants helps, but knowing what someone needs is enough to convince them to do a lot. Sol is one to usually keep his word, even more so to convince someone to do its bidding, but he's not above lying and ditching others to save his own ass. He's very much someone who sees himself as leagues better than Gary, but falls into the same tendencies of running over other people to get what he wants. They're two sides of the coin in that regard. Alongside Sol, other Darkners fell into Gary's world, now all coming together to hopefully escape this whole nightmare. Kinder is another Darkner who fell into Gary's world, being plucked from his own dark world and thrust into this technological nightmare. Unlike Sol, Kinder didn't come from just another version of Cyber City, but from his own dark world. In the light world, Kinder is a sketchbook, someone's prized possession. By being taken away into Gary's world, he was snatched from his Lightner's hands, where he belonged. By following Sol, regardless of how unhinged he may seem sometimes, Kinder hopes to return to his Lightner's side as fast as possible. Kinder is a loner. He's reserved but sweet under all that rough exterior. He's mute but very expressive, choosing to communicate with other people by using ASL, which is sign language. Under his lonely but threatening outer shell is still a quiet but kid-friendly goofiness, calm, collected, but entertaining to a younger audience. Kinder was created by a child. He's like a toy or diary, someone to tell your secrets to and form a bond as if they were a true friend. He's inherently good at dealing with children, though his moral compass has been severely affected by the time he's spent by himself. Kinder is very much inspired by my own sketchbooks, stuffed to the brim with memories and stickers, thoughts and rambles, all that stuff. He feels inherently out of place in such a technological world like Neo City and just wishes to return to the calmness he had by his Lightner side. The next two characters will be talked about together since in-game they're kind of a duo. Dolly and Sweater work together as a duo. Dolly is a representation of old web horror stories like haunted chainmails and creepypastas, while Sweater works more off of Chapter 2's Snowgrave route, an alternative route the player can take where they freeze over the whole city. Think of it as like the genocide route in Undertale, even if the two have like major differences. They play off of being a scaredy cat and fearless creature trope, with Dolly being made to be purposely unnerving, while Sweater is someone who would much rather not be here at all. Dolly is a quiet, eerie thing. She has a habit of silently stalking or following people to scare them into passing her chain letter on. Since she's mostly used to scaring people until they pass her cursed chain letter on, she's not used to cementing herself in one place or to other people. When forced to do just that, Dolly's like a haunting. She'll appear and disappear, always keeping a distance. She's very stone-faced, not emoting a lot, so she relies more on actions to show that she's always listening, for better or for worse. Meanwhile, Sweater is tremulous and soft-spoken. He's a scaredy cat who hides behind a bigger enemy to keep himself safe. That's why he sticks with Dolly so much. He's very used to his own comfort zone, and despite being willing to get out of it for a while, he will always return to it. He's genuinely very easy to scare or hurt, so he'd rather hold on to someone else for as long as he's out of said comfort zone. This duo is always so much fun to write, since they already work off of an established trope. They tag with Kinder a lot, making them more of a trio that likes to stick together to stay safe. Other more familiar faces make a comeback, being reworked by Gary out of sheer spite to now make them as pitiful and pathetic as Gary once was. Swatch returns as a banished worker of Gary's studio, buried underneath the TV studio tower and forgotten by everyone else upstairs. His pristine butler/coffee shop owner job was replaced by an overworking fast food job. Gary literally made this guy work at like backrooms McDonald's. That's how petty this man is. Meanwhile, his Addison friends were all turned into copies of Spamton, small little things that now live in the trash. It was Gary's punishment for having been abandoned by all of his friends and colleagues when he fell from grace. There's a lot more enemies and NPCs around, but I'll be sticking to the basics for the sake of time. Plus, if you want to read all about each and every single one of these guys, they are over on my website. Haha, shameless plug, but it's really where like 90% of the information on this project is stored. There's sprites and images and enemies, there's like fake screenshots, there's so much, just go check it out, please. Now that you've gotten a good idea of the cast, let me tell you what this whole thing is all about. As mentioned before, Gary made himself a massive city and is now stuck in it, trying desperately to find a way out so he can escape Gaster. He's fucked people over, taken people from their houses and lighteners. It's bad. There's still plenty of stories we don't know about of just how many people Gary destroyed in his pursuit for freedom, and that'll lend itself to future installments for the project. As Gary's fighting to escape, Chris and their gang arrive to close off the Dark Fountain again, leaving Gary to get too busy with them to attempt any escape. As the gang traverses New City and Gary's TV studio tower, they uncover bits and pieces of what Gary's really up to and just how much he's ruined their reality with his own plans. At the end of it all, regardless of what route you take, yes, this project has 2 different routes you can take, but this is already long enough as is. Go see my website for more information, please. Again, at the end of it all, Gary dies. Yes, you do manage to kill him, or at least to weaken him enough so that Gaster can come in, take back control over the timeline. He erases Gary from existence and reduces him back to just Spamton, making you finish chapter 2 as it was intended. The decision to have Gary die may come across as a bit brutal, but if the idea of Deltarune is that nobody can choose who they are in this world, then having Gary be forced back in line makes sense. Even so, just because he's dead doesn't mean he'll be gone from the narrative. This first chapter was just the introduction. The amount of consequences from his actions extend into other chapters, other worlds. Gary is now figuratively immortal as a ghost that will haunt the narrative, people affected by him not being able to move on with their lives. With the end of chapter 2 came the next adventure. In chapter 3, the fun gang awakes in the TV world, a dark world situated inside Chris's house, with the main figure of this world being Tenna, a living room TV. If you don't know a thing about Deltarune, you have to have seen this guy all over social media in the last like 3 or 4 months. But even new dark worlds aren't safe from Gary's meddling. Alongside the usual charm of Tenna's world came Little Telly, a smaller TV darkener that scurried around the TV studio, always just out of sight. Gary staring into other timelines made characters appear in places they shouldn't be. New faces you shouldn't have had contact with. Little Telly is a child bedroom's TV that somehow ended up in Tenna's studio, being very out of place as Tenna was supposed to be the only TV in the house. Little Telly is a quiet. She's very sneaky and elusive. A lot of people in the TV world describing her as hard to get a hold of. Still, under all of that self-preservation, she's still very childish with a knack for playing pranks on people. I mean, she's just a kid. She seems to naturally trust other kids over trusting adults, though she does have some adults in the studio, mostly Ram and later on Tenna. She seems to at least be comfortable enough around. Later on in the chapter, she becomes much harder to get a hold of as Tenna seems to put her aside to focus on Chris. Telly is a big work in progress. Her relationship with Tenna and the whole TV world being worked on still. Where she came from and where she goes once the chapter is over is still a mystery. Still, she's been introduced already to you guys with my sketchbooks and posts and everything, so I have to at least mention her. Hopefully I'll get to tell you more about her as time goes on. This project is far from over. Deltarune has 4 chapters out at the time of writing this script and around 7 planned. As the game grows, so will this project to encompass new worlds and characters into it. The damage caused by Gary's timeline meddling runs deep, and nobody is safe from having their lives turned upside down because of it. And that is pretty much it! Oh my god, that's all I have for now. I'm so glad people seem to be enjoying this. I've been working on this whole universe since like 2022, shortly after chapter 2 released, and I've been having so much fun making artwork and sprites and anything I can show off with my little project. Getting to make a video about it was something I'd been wanting to do for a while, but knew it would take a lot of work to do so. Still, I'm glad I could tell you all about it. Okay, I'm going off script now just to finish the video, but like, oh my god, this was a pain to make. Writing the script, editing everything. I've been trying to record this video for like 2 days. There's like a giant storm going on outside. I'm so sorry if you could hear that, but I did my best, and hopefully you guys enjoyed what I brought you. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, blah blah blah, YouTube words. If you would like to see these characters again and some art I make of them, you can follow me on my social medias. Hopefully you will, see them there again. And if you would really like to know more about this project I've been working on, everything is backed up over on my website. Everything you can think about is there. I have made character profiles for each character. Even enemies in the world have little profiles. There's a whole map you can explore with different locations of the project. There's items you could get in the game. I went through everything. This has been 4 years in the making, and I'm so proud of what I've made so far. And clearly I love it a lot. I love this project a lot. And I would love to have the chance to share it with you guys. Once again, if you would like to get sneak peeks and behind the scenes looks at stuff I'm doing, you can also join my Discord server. I talk a lot about these guys there. I'm completely obsessed, honestly. But yeah, if you would like to join it, link is in the description, and we would love to see you there. And I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!